So, it's one, I was thinking about this. It's exactly 1 week before Christmas. And we're given the gift of having the Nelms brothers on the Oh Brother podcast. So welcome, Ian and Eshom. We appreciate you guys being here. I'll be honest, we thought maybe we were being catfished. We just weren't quite sure. We reached out to Chance. We left messages for Mel, even the Mondo boys that ghosted us. So
what? Really?
We're just thrilled that you guys are here, that you showed up.
I thought it was going to be James. I thought it was going to be James Lafferty for sure, but
that'd be a good interview too.
Oh
Love
man,
when did
he's taken off.
When did he change his name from Nelms to Lafferty? When did that?
Yeah, we've got a lot of long-term collaborators. James Lafferty's one of them. Our director of photography, Johnny Durango. I mean, these are all what we consider third and fourth Nelms brothers at this point.
Yeah, Michelle Lang, she's produced everything since Lost on Purpose for us.
Yeah.
I mean, we
married her, so
I did. I married her.
Smart.
Everyone in the family.
That's a wise man. Obviously we want to talk about the current film Fatman, because I will be honest, I wasn't familiar with your work, but I know now, since seeing that film, between the two of us, I think we've seen everything, including maybe some high school productions that you guys have done.
I can't wait to dig in. You guys, we're still dark.
Yeah, we obviously we want to talk about Fatman, but we wanted to know if you'd indulge us a little bit and sort of take us back, because we've obviously from what we've read and researched, know a little bit about kind of some of the beginnings with Ian with wrestling and the fine arts, Eshom, and those sort of things. But where did it converge? What's the journey into filmmaking? What's that story?
Well, I think, look, there came a moment in around 2002, 2001, 2002, where all of the skills that we had been gathering in our lives, sort of unknowingly coalesced into a film career. And so our father was a professional photographer. And so he had done so for like 20 years. And he would drag us along to his productions, make us, by the time Ian and I were like 13 or 14, we'd been to like 300 weddings, and he would just like give us a camera and go to the back of the church and take pictures. We'd load his backs. This is when film, actually shot on film. So we'd be loading his Hasselblad camera backs for him. We would do like tons of work, and we would just and he did local video productions for like I remember he did like an advertisement for like the fire department and like local like Spanish channel like car lots and stuff like that. And we would tag along, and I remember at one point like one of the guys, John McCrae, like cut us into Predator, which was our favorite movie. So he's like, oh, we could shoot some like little inserts in your backyard and like cut you guys into that movie. And then Ian took that video equipment and like 8 years old made a little movie. It was kind of crazy to be around this stuff and not have the direction that we were going to go be filmmakers. It was just there, so we were just using it. And then that naturally sort of transitioned into a love of film when our mom, who's an avid movie maniac, got a Clint Eastwood subscription on VHS. And so we would get a new Clint Eastwood classic every other week, and we would just devour those things. We'd watch them until the tape wore out, So I think those sort of factors are sort of like all in a kettle, and it's stirring. And then I remember the moment that it all sort of clicked is this is after I'd gone to art school and had a very miserable time there. And Ian was in Bakersfield wrestling his way through college, but falling in love with literature and plays and things like that. I remember I watched these two films one night on like a AMC or like a Sundance channel or something, and they were The Barfly and The Real Blonde, and they just hit us, like they hit me, and it was the first time where these were independent productions, and you could kind of see like, oh, well, Ian and I could like, we could like grab our friends and go to a bar and write dialogue, like you could do stuff like that. So I called Ian the next morning and I was like, man, I just watched these two movies, and I've kind of had a paradigm shift because we had grown up, being in love with Terminator and Aliens and Predator, which I still love to this day, but they're so big and such monstrous productions that you can't see the craft so much in them. And I remember Ian called me and he was like, dude, I just watched two movies last night. Like that's when he fired back at me. And unbeknownst to each other, we had watched the same two movies, states apart, thousands of miles apart, because I was in Kansas City, he's in California. And we both had this radical shift in our paradigm. And from that moment, I honestly were like, okay, I'm coming back this summer. I'm ditching this art school thing, and we're gonna like tackle this movie thing. And that was it.
And then we started writing scripts we started writing a script that summer because Esh was working on a comic book while he was at art school, and I was writing some plays, and we were just like, oh, you know what? Like I really liked the idea he had for his comic book. It was like this post-apocalyptic kind of Mad Max thing, you know? And we were like, oh yeah, that sounds awesome. Let's make that into a screenplay as well. So we started
Max meets Saving Private Ryan.
like it's a cool and fun idea, but the script was crap. But it was our first script, and we were just writing. We were just having fun, and we had such a blast writing that script. And then we shot probably half a dozen short films that summer with our parents' crappy little camcorder. And then we were like, you know what? I think we're ready to go down to LA. We bought
a book. Remember the book?
The book that said, writing the way into Hollywood was writing a query letter. So we were like, I can't remember exactly what the book was called, but
I think it was called How to Sell Your Screenplay.
How to Sell Your Screenplay, Writing the Perfect Query Letter or something like that. But it was like thick and all about writing a query letter. And so we read this book, and then we bought all these books that were like, this, like, it showed you where all the producers and production companies and gave you their address. And we're about 3.5 hours from LA. And I remember we were just like, you know what, let's go down there with our query letter about our script and go in there and sell this fucking thing. Like, we're going to do it. And so we write this query letter that's, two paragraphs. And the book was talking about, you really got to stand out, and you really got to, these query letters got to be 2 paragraphs of gold that just get people excited. So we wrote some like ridiculousness in there. I mean, just
it was a slap across the face, like some offensive language. Like it wasn't. Yeah. It was rowdy,
but we were trying to stand out, and so we decided to go down there. And the day we went down there was like a day or two before Christmas. And of course, everybody's accepting query letters a day or two before Christmas. But what the interesting thing that happened is when we got down there, like the guard was down. There was like no receptionists at all these places. So I remember walking into Gersh, because we've been into Gersh, and they're actually in the same building they were in when we went down there 20 years ago. And so we go down there, and I remember just like walking into Gersh, and like there's no secretary. So we just walk in, we're looking around, and we're like, hello? And now you walk in, 25 people hit the door. You can't get 2 steps outside the elevator without being accosted by half a dozen people. Who are you? What are you here for? What are you doing here? Well, then, like, we just walked in, we're just looking around the vacant halls, and we started yelling down the office, like, we're like, hello, and then some guy stuck his head out and was like, who are you? What's going on? And we're like, hey!
Ambushed him.
We just attacked, and we did that at about 20 different places.
Read this.
Exactly, man.
We did the hard sell for sure.
Dude, we hard sold like 20 people. And I mean, we talked to one of the producers of American Pie. I can't remember his name right now. Chris, I can't remember. Anyway, he was actually there in the office. He was just like, what the hell are you guys doing out on the day before Christmas? Shilling a query letter. You guys are nuts. But he talked to us for a second. That was really cool. But yeah, we were encouraged enough. Nobody like wrote us back and was like, can't wait to read that screenplay. They were more like, keep going, guys, but for some reason we were blind and naive enough to think that was some kind of encouragement. We were just like, oh yeah, perfect. Let's move down there. So like 6 months later, we moved down there, and like June of that year, we were down there in LA, got an apartment off of, Sunset, over off Yucca. And we were just like, all right, or Hollywood and Yucca. We were just like, Carol Burnett's old stomping grounds. We were just like, oh man, I think, okay, we just landed. We both got jobs. I went to work at Tony Roma's, a place for ribs. Esh went to work at the ArcLight movie theater because it had just opened. We're like, all right, this is time to make our movie fortunes.
Pull up. And and then like honestly, like just had no clue. And we were talking about like, did we go to film school? Like that was like the next thing because I'd gone to art school and Ian had a BS degree. It was like a BA degree, right?
Oh, it was BA full of BS.
I got one of those too.
So we go to USC and we do the tour, and they're like, if your favorite movie is Star Wars, this is where you belong. And then we go to like UCLA, and they're like, if your favorite movie is Star Wars, get the fuck out of here, And then we go to like LA Film School, and they're like, 4 years from now, you'll get to touch a camera. And we were like, this isn't going to work. So,
no,
it just happens that I got rear-ended in a car accident like a month later, and rather than repairing my beloved 1984 Volkswagen Vanagon, I took the
still drives to this day.
and we bought the DVX 100 camera, which had just come out, and it was like a prosumer video camera for like what, $4,500, something like that.
Yep. It had just come out. It had just come out. They'd shot, like, Panasonic had done, like, commissioned like 2 short films from some established filmmakers, and we were like, wow, that looks like 16 millimeter, you know.
And so we just started shooting everything we could with that. And we were like, this is the tool that's going to liberate us. Like, we can just go out and make stuff. We don't need, anybody else. And so that's what we started doing. We just started writing and making stuff. I remember we went out and Ian wrote a script, and we went out and shot that thing in 7 days in the woods.
And then because I wrote the script, I remember we'd written like 3 big scripts. Fatman was one of them at that point.
Right.
We had gotten people to read it, and they were just like, this is fucking nuts. Like, who are you guys? and that was 14 years ago. People were reading it and being like, you guys are fucking nuts. I mean, this is crazy. This is a crazy script. We had a couple of those crazy scripts. And then we got the idea of like, well, I think the problem is that people just aren't seeing our movies made. Like, let's write something and make it, and then they'll see the genius, you know.
Right. Well, when we did our episode reviewing Fatman, that's exactly how I opened it. Was I said to Mike, holy shit, because I'd never seen anything like it
and
before.
We both said, this is unique. This is something we haven't seen before, which really hit us. And then I had to see everything you made. And I basically got my hands on 4 films, Lost on Purpose, Waffle Street, and Small Town Crime, which was great. And, but before that, I think you guys missed a big tag was with Squirrel Trap. Because Ian,
what he wrote.
Was that the first one?
Yeah,
that's exactly what we were talking about. Like, we came out of this is a pretty good story. So like we come out and we're like, all right, well, we just got to make something. So I remember I burned the midnight oil for like, I mean, when you're working at a restaurant and a movie theater and you start at like 4 o'clock, you're working till like 4 a.m., 5 a.m., and then we're sleeping till like 1 o'clock, and then we're going to work at 4, and like,
we were like vampires. We were living a vampire life.
It was kind of sweet because, I mean, everything goes away at about 9 or 10 o'clock, and you just focus, you know what I mean? And we're grinders. Like, we grew up, our parents are grinders. So like we know how to work. So we have a good work ethic. So we would just work our asses off for years and years. But at this point, we'd been in town like a year and a half, and we were just like, I think the problem is people just don't see our stuff. So let's write something. So I wrote this script and I give it to Esh, and I'm like, all right, read this thing. I probably wrote it in like 3 or 4 weeks. I'm like, read it. Let me know what you think. He reads it and he goes, I think we can make a movie out of this. So
now, do you basically write the first pass and then you go over it, or?
I mean, it's a little different. I mean, and that one was different because I was just a maniac, and I was just like, fuck it, I'm writing something we can make and shoot tomorrow.
Right.
And it happens though, like where we'll brainstorm an idea. Typically, it's usually me that runs off and gets in a hurry to put something on paper. And then, but it's all, Esh and I will come up with these ideas. We'll throw them back and forth. And then by the time I'm writing it, I can't even remember who came up with what. I put it down on the paper. I come back like the next night or two and I give it to him, or I email it to him. He reads it and goes, okay, I'll give it back to you in like a day or two. And then he does his thing and he passes it back to me, and then I pass it back to him. And then pretty soon we got 15 to 20 pages we really like, and we got a starting point, and we both just kind of start diving in on scenes at that point. And we feel like, we've got our foot on the ground. Like we understand what we're writing. And from there, we just kind of pass it back and forth until we're both happy. Sometimes we're sitting right next to each other, laughing at each other, throwing shit at each other, brainstorming. It's fun. Like, we have a good time when we're writing. And then when we finish it, you hope to make it. So if you head out to direct it, it's a lot similar between us. Ash is a professional storyboard artist. And he'll storyboard every frame of the damn thing. I mean, it's like, if the people, are 2 people sitting across from each other at a diner the entire time at a table, he'll storyboard every frame of that, you know what I mean? Even if it's just a slight camera movement or whatever, like he's got every move we have is literally down. So that when we get on set, we have that blueprint down. All the time it happens where it's like, oh, that table we were going to shoot at is now ripped out of the wall and it's not there anymore. So it's like, okay, well, I guess we'll flip flop that to the other side. Or you know what? Why don't we have him walking in this time? It's just a blueprint to get us in the door, get us started.
Right.
And stuff changes all the time, but pretty much, you know, we've got our blueprint of what we're going to do. And if anything we haven't talked about, we'll quickly sidebar, you know, for about 30 seconds or 20 seconds. And
Now, Michael, were you able to find Squirrel Trap?
I didn't find it, and I'll tell you why I wanted to find it, because of Ian's role in it, which was asshole. I gotta see this. How do you play an asshole? I gotta learn this.
Oh, come on. You know how to play an asshole.
Well, I know in real life, but
I just puckered up my lips real tight.
but you know, the first one I saw was Lost. Well, actually, I watched Waffle Street first, and then went to Lost on Purpose.
I can't tell you how paranoid he was. He said, I'm going to say Waffle House. I'm going to say Waffle House.
Hey,
that's what I kept thinking.
You wouldn't be the first. You wouldn't be the first.
But Lost on Purpose was kind of like a group of guys at a period in time. You know, that's the way I think of it. It was like this group of guys came together, had this experience at this time. You know, you can't go back. Like one of them wanted to go back. But the thing I found interesting was there was a relationship between the two brothers, Randall and James Lafferty's character, which I forget his name.
Rupert.
Yeah. And I was wondering how much of that is you guys.
It's like 99% us.
That's what because James does a great narrative over a lot of it. And he says something about being a wrestler. And I'm like, I'm wondering if this is the brothers here. It's gotta be.
There's certainly, like, look, we cut the veins and put some of us in those characters. You know, we take a lot of the world around us and try to infuse it into our films in every way possible.
Especially Lost on Purpose.
Yeah.
We bled all over that one. That, like, the woman running that dairy farm is kind of like our mom.
Yeah.
Like, I mean,
Jane Krasinski played that part.
Kasmeric.
Kasmeric.
Yeah.
We also, like, we shot in our hometown. So when you're seeing, like, some of those locations, like, some of those locations are our parents' houses. Some of those locations are, like, all around this where we grew up. So we went to our hometown and we wanted to make a love letter to our hometown, which is very much like Our American Graffiti or Last Picture Show.
Yeah, that scene where Dale Dickey is, like, watering the dogs, and they're, like, out there, and they're like, "Oh my God, why do you have so many dogs, Mom?" or whatever. That's literally at my parents' house. That's where we grew up.
Wow. So how do you go from that to Small Town Crime, which I'm hoping isn't based on you guys?
It's interesting, right? Like, we live about, like, our parents live about 3.5 hours from LA, and we'll just say, like, how the seed of Small Town Crime jumped into our heads. We're driving through Bakersfield late one night, because Ian and I would do the drive frequently. And this is when we were living together in Los Angeles and doing the grind. And I remember we're motoring home for a holiday or something. And we're driving through all these pump jacks. The pump jacks are going. And we're looking around like, God, this is pretty cool. Like, visually. I mean, what if some, like, fall down drunk, like, woke up out here and, like, found a body, you know? And those are the kind of, like, crazy things you're musing about at 3 a.m. as you're trying to keep each other awake as you're driving several hundred miles back and forth. And we just got excited about that idea, and that was where the impetus left off, and then we just built it out from there.
And it really got a lot of buzz at South by Southwest, because it was like one of the 5 movies you got to see. And a lot of, we start seeing a lot of the same cast members. Dale Dickey, you mentioned, she played a bartender in that.
Yeah.
And it's really good. I mean, and I'm wondering, because Fatman was written way before that. So you make that, gets a lot of buzz. Is that what gets you Fatman finally says, hey, we're going to take this serious?
Yeah, that's exactly it. I mean, when we were running around with this thing for 14 years, running around with Fatman for 14 years, we get a lot of meetings off of it because it was such a fun and crazy script. But the question people had when we got in there was just like, okay, well, what does this look like? What is this, like, what's the tone? Because it's fucking crazy. Like, what is this? And we're like, oh, can't you read it on the page? That's what we would say when it first came to town. But you realize later on that, I got to give them examples. So you start comping all these films, and you start naming 5 of your favorite films that kind of feel like it. Unbreakable. It's like Unforgiven. It's like a Leone Western. It's like, and you're like, all of a sudden you're like fucking 5 movies in, and people are trying to wrap their brains around it, and they're just swirling, and they're like, I don't know what the fuck that is, So you have to make something, especially when it's that kind of specific. You have to make something that kind of points back to it. And we'd finally gotten the opportunity to make one of our crime fillers,
which we've been writing the whole time.
We'd been writing. We were very passionate about, but we had a really hard time getting off the ground because they cost money, because you've got all these crazy fun gags in them, and you can't just go out and do those in your mom's backyard. They'll just kind of come out like shit, unless you can write one that kind of functions in your mom's backyard. But yeah, we were able to point back and say, that's the tone right there. It's got Western undertones. It's a dark comedy. It's also a thriller. It's also got action. It's also got drama. You know, it's a character piece. Like, all those things were melded together in Small Town Crime, and we were able to just literally just point at it and say, read the script after we did Small Town Crime. And they were like, okay, I understand this. I get it. Okay, great.
Yeah, we hit. We kept saying to each other, we're like, how do we did the podcast, and we did it. We usually wait a week, but we did it right after watching it. And my jaw, I was still stunned. I was like, what did I just see? And then we start going back, and I'm like, you know, that great scene at the end with Mel and Walton, that's high noon. You know, like, we're like, that's high noon.
Well, the funny thing is like, right, you make these films, and I mean, you make these movies and you write these things, and you've ingested, Lord knows how many movies we've all ingested, and you have these ones that you love sort of subconsciously inside of you. Yeah. And so when these moments come up, because I remember that didn't even hit me that it was high noon until Mel literally said on set, well, it's kind of like high noon. And we're all,
no shit. Wow.
Fuck, he's right. It's kind of high noonish. Holy shit. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, did he come with, I was a little detail, but did he come to the set with that slight accent that he's got as?
Yes. Well, when we sat down and talked to him, it was great. We sat down, like, this is a fun story too. Like, we'd given him, his agent, the script. Our agent had given his agent the script and said, hey, like, the guys really want Mel for this. And I get this email back 2 weeks later, because you go out to actors all the time for stuff and you're really excited, and then 2 weeks go by and they're like, sorry, you know, or you just never hear back, and you're like, fuck, we're moving on. Who are we going to get? Shit, I really wanted that person. Well, Mel wrote us 2 weeks later and was like, and I didn't know it was Mel. I just got this random email amongst all these other emails that were coming in from producers that were like, hey, we'd like to sit down with you about this. We like the script. So I get this email that says, hey, you know, I like the script. I thought it was really funny. Let's sit down for a chin wag. And I'm like, what's a chin wag?
What's a chin wag?
Like, what? Okay. And then I write him back. I'm like, oh, awesome. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I'm thinking, what producer or financier is this that we'll be talking to pitch or whatever? Like, great. You know, who am I talking with? And then he writes back. He's like, oh, sorry, I forget to sign off sometimes. This is Mel. And I'm just like, whoa. Ash and I are like, what? Like, we're so excited. And I remember literally after that email, Ash and I are like hugging, and we're like, you know what? Like, who gives a shit if he even fucking does it at this point? The guy liked the script. He understands it. He thought it was funny. This is awesome. You know, we were just so pumped to have him respond to it because we were so excited to get him. And so they're like, all right, you get 45 minutes with him in this cafe in Malibu, and he's going to sit down and talk with you and basically see if you're nuts or not. So
that's kind of how we reacted when you guys agreed to come on here.
Well, look, I think for a long time, like, when we were getting these meetings, like with the script, people just wanted to see the maniacs that would walk through the door. You know, that who would crack this bizarre tale. They gotta have three eyes or something like that.
But there is, like, you know, the opening shot. I was asking Dan. I said, "Do you remember the opening shot?" And he was like, I said, "Think of white. You see a white screen, which is, you know, how Fatman opens, and then all of a sudden you see the snow brushing away."
Yeah,
that's a great opening shot. And then we've got that. There's like a Christmas song, but it's got an evil tone to it. And I forget the name of the song, but what a great, and then we go into chants.
The first one is a Mondo Boys original, and the guys who did the score, Mike and Mike, and that
was what they submitted to us as a tape to get the job. And it was
great.
They had watched our rough, and, you know, we had a bunch of comps in there in some places, and we were like, hey, you know, like, we really don't feel like there were like 3 or 4 places that we didn't have comps that we even liked. And that was one of them. We were just like, hey, if you could put something on the front of this for us, just as kind of like, hey, like, here's our audition, you know, here's the vein we think this should be played. And they sent us that track, and it literally is 99% of what it was when they sent us it. And they did it in like 3 or 4 days and sent it to us. And we were like, holy shit, these guys get it. Like, this nailed it. This is great.
So when you were meeting with Mel, that meeting you were talking about, did the conversation about that accent come up with the?
Oh, not yet.
Sort of, not the accent exactly, but he during the meeting he started saying like, I see this guy as an old cowboy, and we were like, oh, awesome.
And I think he like kind of, it was inspired by a horse trainer or something that he knows.
Yeah, he was referencing a horse trainer that had that kind of voice and had some of these just some of the gestures and the way that he carries himself. He had something in mind that was layered up behind himself that was great. Yeah, we thought it was really cool. We're like, yes, because I mean, Esh and I, we grew up in the Central Valley. We're around. Our parents have a horse ranch, and that's what we grew up on. And he embodies a lot of the folks that we swirled around in our teenage years. Like that's a lot of my parents' friends.
I said to Mike when we that where he says Jonathan Miller, you twisted child. Like it's so. There's something about that. I just like, every time I hear that now,
it's interesting because it's very matter of fact and direct. Right.
But there's also a little something on it, a little curve on the language, on the dialect.
He really captured it. He really understood, like, I don't know, he really understood. And then he was also able to bring out the emotions behind
exactly
what he's calling that guy out. You see a flood of emotions. You see that download happening inside his brain.
And with Walton too, who he's just phenomenal. What a chameleon this guy is. But if you could settle this for Mike and I, we're just sort of wondering when they're having that dialogue and he's talking about, Mel says there's limits to what I can do. And Walton, sort of talking about his parents. Is it that, his parents were both abusive, or there was some, obviously, I mean, I took it that his father abused him, at least with the cigarette burns in the arm. And Mel's like, I couldn't replace your parents. What exactly was going on there with Walton's character?
Well, for us, what it means, because I've had another friend of ours said, well, it meant this to me, interesting, because it worked both ways. Really.
Yeah, because look, it's like either his parents passed away,
right,
bingo,
and he had really shitty, he had a really shitty time in the adoption process and got some bad seeds throughout the foster care.
That's what I'm going with.
Or what we meant, which totally works, but what we meant by it was that his parents were incredibly abusive and shitty, and he had a really rough, adolescence, and grew up to be very hateful, and that's pretty much what. But at one point, he asked Santa for new parents. He said, "Hey, I'd love to get some new parents. Like, I don't like my parents."
See, I had this whole subplot in my head that his dad was a sheriff, and that was the car, and awesome. he wanted Mel to bring back his dad who got killed. I mean, my brain went somewhere else.
Well, that's
crazy.
Yeah,
look,
that's a good thing about art.
When we're writing, we're constantly thinking about, we're constantly trying to think about what the audience is going to perceive or build on a line, on a word. When Mel says, "You think you're the first?" Like,
right.
We throw that in there because it adds. You get a visual of 5 different movies. You're like, holy shit!
Yeah, like your brain just goes running off on vacation for a half a second, and it comes back with all this baggage, and we're like, yes, because Ian and I hate over exposition in movies. Like it just.
Again, the brilliance, I think, of Fatman is the fact that you don't insult the audience. You let us fill in a lot of details. Like an example would be, we see, Mel with Marianne. He's getting ready to go out. It's Christmas Eve, and she's like going over the list. And she's like, "You want to do this?" He's like, "Just give me the list." And he walks out. She grabs the booze, gives him hot chocolate. And then there was a great cut there. We don't have to see him put on the suit. We don't have to see him go down a chimney. We don't have to see him flying. We get to fill all that in for ourselves. We know he's capable of all that stuff, but all of a sudden he comes back and it's the next day. So it took me a minute to get grounded and say, okay, wait, what's going on? It looked like he was sneaking something under the bed. But I love that there's so much we don't see that, you know, that we know. Everybody knows who Santa Claus is,
Right.
how he dresses, what he looks like. We don't need all of that. And I think that would have been insulting almost if you did do that stuff. That's
Well,
why
it was twofold. It was twofold for us, and you're absolutely right. Like, we didn't want to show it because we'd seen it 1,000 times. And we were just
Right.
like, I don't want to see this again. Like, this isn't going to add to the reality that we're trying to create. I don't want to see him with rocket boosters and 5 flying reindeer go across the moon, and then he goes through a wormhole or some shit. It's like, oh, we've seen that. We understand. And we have all that baggage already built in. You've watched 100 iterations of Santa where, you know, he goes and delivers presents to people. You know, he, you know, is very giving. You know, he delivers coal. You know, so we had all the, and, you know, he has elves. You know, he has reindeer. So we knew you had those. And now it's like up to us to how do we subvert those expectations for you, and how do we ground it and really try to ground this stuff to where it would actually be a reality. And it was like, how do we do that in a way that's fun and interesting and not like pounding you on the head? And we want to see all those moments in between instead of the schmaltzy. Like, how do we can't out schmaltzy Christmas Chronicles. Like, that's just not, I mean, there's no reason for us to do that. That's not our movie. Like, how do we give you all those in between moments that you don't see in Christmas Chronicles?
You know what was,
that was perfect.
What was beautiful is the scene where Marianne, who's unbelievable too. What a coupling that was with those two. But when she leaves the folders for him out in the barn, man, that really resonated with me when I first saw it.
I love that.
Where did that come from?
Well, that's part of the process. Like, I don't even know if Eshom and I remember who wrote it, but I mean, what it came from was just us brainstorming over why would he have taken this job in the first place, and what would this actually mean to people? Like, there's got to be some kind of meaning to him,
like a higher meaning to his gift giving, right? Like, it's too banal, it's too pedestrian to just be throwing toys to everyone indiscriminately. So we were like, no, this has to have influence on your life.
Because otherwise he's just like some dude running around like trying to buy people into being good. Whereas the other way, he's like, oh, I'm trying to encourage them into some kind of vocation, or I'm trying to encourage them into their passion, or, oh, I see little Billy, you know, likes to cook or whatever, so I'm going to give him an oven, and he's going to learn he's going to, you know, be able to do the things that he loves with this and make him a better person, and he'll be a chef later or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know what it says about me, but I said to Mike, and we had a debate about this. I said, I almost wanted it to end after Santa got plugged.
Amazing.
See, I needed to see him back.
I still stand by that a little bit.
You're like, you know what? It's fucking over.
Yeah, and I did. And I said, okay, before we get on with you guys, I said, okay, I'll give you a little room there, and I'll say, when Ruth wastes the skinny man, okay, then you can end it. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe I need to go back into therapy.
Interesting. Did it? I mean, did you get anything out of him going back and sort of scaring Billy straight?
I did, because as we talked about, you know, the spirit of Christmas and the fact that it lives in all of us, and, you know, ending it there would have been ending that whole idea, I guess. So I totally saw that. I think there was something about it ending at that point that I could have walked away. And
I would have been pissed off. I would have been like, oh, come on. What happened to him? Was he able to heal himself? I mean, he took one right in the head. Like,
sure.
How do you come back? And then when he's talking to Billy, I'm like, this is unforgiving. This is unforgiving. When Clint's on the horse and he yells at the town, you don't do this again, or I'm going to come back here and I'm going to kill all you sons of bitches. Yeah. That's what I felt like Mel was saying to Billy, you know, you're going to be good, or I'm going to come back and I'm going to, you know, take care of this.
With you.
Yeah.
Now, does it set up for a Fatman sequel, perhaps?
Oh, certainly. Yeah, we would be excited to dive in again and expand.
What about the fact that, you know, it's such a bummer because you guys wrapped in February, right before.
I think we wrapped right in the middle of March.
Oh, before.
We wrapped one day before Canada shut down all of their productions. And they were telling us for our last week, we're going to shut you down. We're going to shut everything down. We're going to shut everything down. They just kept letting it go. And finally
they were monitoring the cases. And fortunately, Ontario, nothing.
Yeah,
no cases. So they were
in Ottawa, there was zero. So I think
oh, you're right. Ontario had a few.
I think Toronto had a few, but luckily they were 4 hours away, and they were that's what was really going like, hey, we're going to shut this down. And when we shut this down, we're shutting down the whole province. Toronto's like, oh, we don't know. They were kind of shaky. And then all of a sudden, and Ottawa had nobody, which was great. So we just kept shooting, and they just kept letting us shoot. And then finally we wrapped, and we're like, whew, I thought we were going to lose that. Like, thank God, because we wouldn't have been able to get back up. We didn't have the budget. We wouldn't have been able to get back up shooting.
Yeah, whatever they shut us down without, we would have had to do without, because there was no backup for us. The resources were rapidly depleting.
Wow. But then you get it done, and the theaters are basically gone. You don't really get that release, which got to be, I mean, this is going to be a movie we're going to see year after year. I'm convinced of that.
Awesome.
But, you don't get that. You didn't get that kind of gift of, hey, here's our opening weekend, because the movie theaters were all basically shut down.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't get to have a premiere. Like, we didn't get to have a premiere. We didn't get to see anybody anywhere. The movie just went out, and we were just like, all right, we're just like texting each other, hey, it's out, it's going out,
Yeah.
Look, I think for us though, we're blessed in that we were able to give this movie to the audiences this year, right?
Yeah.
There was no holding it for next year. That wasn't an option. While Ian and I are huge advocates of the theatrical communal experience of movie going, we're also of the age of the streamers. Like, we're of that age. We all consume a lot of stuff over stream, and in our number one priority is we want people to be safe, right? And we want people to have something fun to watch this holiday season. So for us, that we get to come out, we get to give people something fun, hopefully engaging to watch. Like, that's all you could ask for.
Yeah.
I will say this movie would have been really interesting to watch in a theatrical environment with like a full house, because there's so much nuance to it at times that it's fun to. I remember with Small Town Crime, which is a similar type of script. You would see a kind of ripple effect in a movie theater where like half of the people would laugh over here, and then it would all of a sudden people are like, oh shit, that's a joke. Boom, 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 and it would wave across the theater. And then over here, another patch would laugh at something else, and then it would wave back across the theater. It was so interesting to watch.
And you hit shock moments.
Yeah, that too.
Just come out of nowhere.
Yeah.
And I would have loved to seen how that kind of reaction was. Like, oh my God.
There's also something in the grade, right? So if you grade the movie for your consumer devices, like your televisions and your iPads and all that stuff, and then the movie is graded for the theatrical experience, there's more nuance in the darks and the blacks. So you can actually see into those a little bit better, and things emerge. Like, the movie's visually different. Taken in a theatrical experience, it's more immersive. But look, I mean, that's it's just interesting. Like, when you see him put the pistol under the bed,
right?
Were you able to see that? And how did you guys watch the movie in the theater at home?
We both watched it at home.
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you able to tell what he put under the bed?
I wasn't. I've seen it 5 times, to be honest. I hate to admit that, but. Ultimately, yeah, I did get it. Yeah. But at the first time I didn't. I wasn't sure what it was. I thought he was hiding something from Ruth. Yeah. I wasn't quite sure what it was.
But when you're seeing that on a 30-foot screen, and that it's very evident what he's putting under the bed.
Right.
So it's interesting, right? So it's like you can see that, and now you have that, but it works either way.
Because the one thing we did get to do was, at least we got to see it in a theater while we were color timing it. We got to see it in a theater while we were doing the sound. So, I mean, at least we got to see it on a big screen. We would chuckle back and forth with the technicians we were working with. I guess they're more than technicians, honestly, the artist technicians.
Yeah.
but yeah.
Where is is it a Nova? Where is the car in Small Town Crime right now? I got to know.
There's actually a couple that owns it, and they hit us up on Facebook, and we're like, I think we have your car. And I was like, yep, that's it.
There seems to be a little bit of a theme. There's some sweet rides in some of these.
Well, the Volkswagen, was that your Volkswagen, and was it lost on purpose, right?
The van.
Randall.
That's my Vanagon that I've had since I was 16 years old.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
My parents bought that thing brand new in '84. And I remember when our dad, and this will kind of be a through thread for all the movies. So my dad drove it for about 7-8 years, blew up the engine. So it sat in the front yard for like 3 years. And then I became of age to drive. And I was like, okay, I want a car, right? And he's like, okay, I got like $2,500. I've been like slaving away in the photography studio for like 5 years, right? And I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go get a car. And he's like, well, you can have the van if you can fix it, if you can get it fixed. I'm like, forget that. I want a Nova, like I'm like, I want something that can go kick ass, And he was like, I went and looked at Novas, and I could get a piece of junk for, $2,500 that barely ran, or I can go get the motor in the van fixed for $2,500. So I'm like, okay, I'll get the van fixed. And honestly, like, I've been driving that car ever since, since I was 16 years old, and I'm 42 now. So,
well, when I watched Small Town, when I watched it, as soon as I saw that, my first car was a '74 Chevy Nova.
Oh, that's awesome.
And our father was a mechanic. He was a little out of the business at that point, but mine just stayed prime color, and I put some air shocks, and it never really got it. The car in Small Town Crime is a car I wanted. I just never got to that point.
Dude, that car was inspired by a friend of ours, Brian Gaines, who had a car in high school. He had a Nova, the 350, and that. I remember going to lunch with him. We'd be like, let's go to lunch. And he'd hammer on that thing, and he'd just sling us back in the seats like we'd never felt speed like that. And so it just burned into our brains. And so when we got the car when we rode into Small Town Crime, that car was written in there from the beginning. We were just like, oh, this is a savage muscle car beast. And so then we get to Utah, and we got to find one, right? Like we have a very small budget. And so we can't build a car like that, right? We don't have Fast and the Furious money. So we're out there like trying to find this car. We're searching high and low. Well, you need two of them. You can't just have one, especially when you have an older car like that's going to break down, stuff. So I remember we found this thing, and Ian and I are on, Facebook or whatever, the one ads for like a week. And we find these two cars that we can put together. And then we have Brian, my buddy from high school, fly out to Utah and assist on the movie and be like the car wrangler. But we got that car, and the dude had put like a 427 big block in it.
Wow.
And it was geared so low. And I remember Ian and I drove it back from Perth. Like we went to see the car, and the guy's like, hey, jump in it, because we wanted something that really performed. Like it's like, we can't cheat this. Like it has to be slinging gravel and doing all the wheel burns and all that. Like we're not going to cheat this. Just like we don't cheat the guns. Like all real muzzle flashes. Like we don't cheat that. And so we get there, and we get in the car. The guy just hammers this thing. And it honestly, no, not to disparage Brian's Nova back in the day, but this thing was like going at warp speed. And we're like, okay, we have to have it. We purchased it right.
Built it for quarter track. He built it for quarter track racing. So it really was torqued. Like, I mean,
but it has no brakes, no power steering. It's like meant to go straight real fast, and no one worries about stopping or turning.
That's a hot car for sure.
Dude, we're driving this thing back, and the guy's like, and we're like a couple hundred miles away from our production office. So we're driving this thing back in the freeway. It's geared so low that you can only go 55 miles an hour, but you can get there real fast. And so it's like down the freeway, and we've never gotten more thumbs up or like, we're driving that thing back to the production office.
That's
and
so badass. It's badass.
We take it out like we got power steering put on it, we got brakes and everything gussied up on it, and we take it out, and test it during the evenings while production.
Mike, was it Mike? Is it Mike?
Mike Kendall, yeah.
Yeah, he had fun. It seems like pulling out. Was it John? Okay.
John Hawks is Mike Kendall in the movie, yeah.
Right.
John Hawks, that's what it is. Right. He was great in that too.
And what's interesting? When we were talking to John, he's like, I'm not a car guy, but when I get behind the wheel of this car, I'm a car guy. And like he
feel it.
He did like 99% of that stuff himself.
Wow.
It was like the whole like circle gravel slinging one, and then off down the road. Like he did that in one take.
That's awesome.
That's great.
So with the time we got left, what can we talk about? Like what's in the works now? What do you guys got coming up? Now that you got two new lifelong fans here too.
We heard Capture. Is that one?
Well, a couple of things happened that were interesting when we went off to shoot Fatman. A couple of projects that we loved ended up wanting to go at the same time, and Capture was one of them. And they were like, "Hey, we want to go make this, and you guys are going to go spend basically a year on Fatman because that's just what it takes."
Yeah.
To pre-production, production, and then we edit. Esh and I edit it, so it's like we're doing all the post, which takes 6 months. So, yeah, we were locked in. We're like, yeah, we're not gonna be back for a year. They're like, like, you mind if we go, get another filmmaker to do it? And we're like, yeah, I understand. Like, they've got investors and they've got money put into the script, and they can't let that sit around for a year,
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we were like, we totally understand. And that actually went. They sold.
They didn't end up using our material for it at all.
And they sold it to Quibi, and that was broken up into like 12 10-minute episodes. And they took the old script and gave it to, I can't remember it was a guy who did like Breaking Bad or something. It was a TV guy, and he turned it into like 12 10-minute scripts and kind of did his own rewrite on it. And then I'm
interested to see it. But like I said, it's none of our material in there, but I like Blake.
Yeah.
Star of it, and The Fugitive is cool, so I would be interested to see it.
Is starring in it. Yeah, I'm curious to see what they ended up doing with it, and they rebranded it as The Fugitive, the series.
Okay.
Series The Fugitive.
So they're just streaming it basically.
Yeah. It
was a great script. It was a really cool script. It was a really interesting script. It was awesome. It was a lot of fun.
And then you were working with Carol Burnett, right?
Yes, and we've turned in our draft to that, which was amazing. And really to celebrate Carol's daughter Carrie was such an honor to do, and she's such a had such a wonderful life, and a person that needs to be remembered and celebrated. But she, they have that project now going with a new filmmaker over at Apple, I believe, is where they're going to land.
Yeah, they moved it. Yeah, I heard that. I read that.
And that same thing happened, right? I mean, we go out to make it. And they're like, hey, we don't really want to wait an entire year to make this thing. And we're like, we get it. We totally understand. And so, they went out and got another filmmaker. But in the process of COVID kicking in, like the whole focus had a really rough time. Their production space had a really rough time. I think they let quite a few people go. So
yeah.
They internally kind of had to gut themselves, and so they put the script in turnaround, which then they went to Apple and just set it up over there. So I have nothing but love for that project, and Carol and Steven and Tina who are doing it. They were great to us, and I'm excited to see where they end up with it, because it's a beautiful project. It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
It's great.
But I think as far as like stuff we're looking to get into, I think we want to, we're looking to sort of bring our tone and genre into something that's a little different in genre. So I think we're looking at some Western ideas. We're looking at some sci-fi, some horror, things like that.
We've also got another script that we wrote that we really love, that was adapted from a book. And we wrote it a couple of years ago, and we've just been making movies kind of, I wouldn't say back to back, but we've been really busy, whether we're writing on a script. Like that Carol Burnett project came out of nowhere and just struck us, and we're just, oh my God, we got to do this,
Yeah.
And same with Capture. We really dug that. So we had done a rewrite on it, and we were about ready to go march off and make that. And then Fatman goes, and we're just like, okay, shit, we got to do Fatman. Like it's
How many times in your life is the project you've been trying to get going for 14 years?
You got to.
Yeah. And
got to do it.
Yeah. It's not Fatman's not an easy pitch. So if we had the opportunity to go, we got to go.
Well, am I right? Did I read somewhere, given how long you guys were working on that, was Jack Nicholson originally someone you were thinking of for that character?
Our original cast was Jack Nicholson and Johnny Depp. Now, we didn't get them attached.
We never had that happen, but
we had it in our heads.
In your heads. Yeah. While you're writing.
But here you are, you're working with, a guy who's won an Academy Award for directing and Best Picture. And you're having him crawl around in like sub-zero snow, and Walton, who's done everything. I mean, what's that like, directing somebody like Mel?
Well, I first like to say, look, the pictures come together the way they're meant to come together. Yeah. And in the time that they're meant to come together. Like each one has its own personal velocity, and it doesn't mean you don't work hard to get them going constantly, but they tend to come together how they're meant to come together.
Yeah.
And when we had Nicholson and Johnny Depp in mind, and I mean, at that time, 14, 15 years ago, that would have been a fantastic movie as well, I think. But having it be 14 years later and having Mel and Walton in those roles and Marianne in that role, because that would have been a very different casting decision as well. Everyone just hit the right, not only was at the right age to do it, but they all hit the right right tone for us. And like, I remember when we sat down with Mel and he was talking about that scene with the elves where he's like, I'm standing on the balcony, I'm looking at these elves, and he's like, I feel like I should be like, I'm going to cry. Like, it's that horrible that I'm going to tell him this. And we're like, yes, exactly. He's all, that's what'll be so funny about it. We're like, exactly. Like, he immediately got the layers. You know, he really got what we were after. We're like, yes, that's the movie. That's perfect.
When I saw him approaching that was in like a Nestle factory, right? A chocolate factory. How ironic is that? But I'm thinking he's going to give like a speech like Alec Baldwin did in Glengarry. Yeah. I thought that's what was going to come out of his mouth. And then he's getting choked up. It was amazing. Great.
Yeah.
You know,
it's, and with Walton, like I remember when we were talking to a bunch of other actors who would have been amazing as well. But when we sat down with Walton, he just stood up in this, this cafe. He stood up and started doing lines out of it and was like, had the gun out. He's like, oh, got this elf in my sights. And I'm like, hey, motherfucker. And we're like, oh, shit. He's right there. That's him.
It was like a John Wick moment, that one scene where he's doing all the training. Let's go again.
Yeah, man.
It's like,
let's go again.
Yeah, let's go again.
What about the deal? What was the cowboy outfit? He hid all of his artillery behind that cowboy outfit. That cracked me up.
We just thought it was cool. What a cool twist that he would have. Look, the old Lone Ranger sort of, good cowboy outfit that he stole from or bought off of some kid or some adult later in life. I think it's we got to check out of that. But that's where he would have his arsenal right behind this.
It was also like a really cool nod to the genre we were homaging. This is a Western, motherfuckers. That's basically what we're saying right there.
And I know that like Chris designed that scene, like it kind of catches your eye, that cowboy outfit in the cave.
Absolutely.
He did an amazing job on that.
Yeah, you're like, why is this catching my eye? And then later when he opens it up, you're like, oh, that's why it was catching my eye,
That montage of him is like one of the funniest friggin' things I've ever seen on film. With him pissing in the snow, and it's just, the whole thing is absurd.
That one's fun, man.
He does so much with his eyes.
Yeah.
Because everyone he looks at, you think he's going to kill.
Yeah.
He's looking at the chick. He's going through the toll booth into Canada.
Yeah.
He's kind of looking at this chick. She's asking for his papers, and I'm waiting for her to just, just put her down.
Sonny Corleone on her or something.
Well, that's the one note we gave Walton that really stood out. And it was one word. We said unpredictable. Like, we want this guy to be unpredictable. I don't want to know who he's going to shoot, when he's going to shoot him, and I want to think he's going to kill everybody. And he took that to heart, and he came back a month later and obviously built his character out, and he had all those nuances and those idiosyncrasies that he does, and he's very like dialed, but it was so fucking amazing. We really got a kick out of what he did with that character. I mean, it's one thing it's one thing to have a conversation with him about it. It's another thing to see him in full skinny man,
Right.
Well, Michael, your reaction is right on point with Mel's reaction. So when we watched the movie with Mel, he's like, it's like he's gonna kill him. He gets a true kick out of that scene. He really loves Walton in the movie. He thinks
they're all amazing. Everybody in the cast is amazing. It's really
and after 5 views, don't think I didn't catch the Nelms convenience store.
That was
great.
The production
Cold drinks, live bait.
I
cut everything.
To drop that kind of stuff on us all the time. We'd be like walk in and there'd be like plaques on the back on the all the elf machines that make like the magic toy machines.
Yeah,
they'd be like Nelms Bros Manufacturing. I'm like, oh, well.
Yeah, we usually don't like to slap our names on things, but I mean, when you show up on the day and it says Nelms Convenience, there's not much you can do about it.
Right.
And it was a very sweet gesture from them. They were they did that to get it.
So that you guys didn't. That was them.
Yeah,
that was you guys.
Yeah, I think we decided on they had no idea what we decided on the color scheme and design of the banner, but it did not say Nelms Bros Convenience there. It said something else, like
Paul's Convenience or something.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it was literally like something like that.
Their mock-up they presented to us did not say Nelms Bros. That was on the day they had some fun and put that up.
It was sitting there like
it was probably some generic shit like Smith Brothers or something like that.
Yeah. It was something like that.
I mean, we just put out a blog today too. I think you might have seen it posted about sort of brothers in films, and thank God for this film, honestly. And I wanted to mention too, before we let you guys go, I don't know if you write this into your calendars or if this is just part of your grind and hustle work ethic mentality, but the way you guys interact with your audience on social media is awesome. And we probably wouldn't be talking to you today if it wasn't for that. So obviously we're appreciative, but you know, that seems to be something that you're very proactive and intentional about.
Yeah, I think, look, it comes from, like, you make these movies to connect with people and to have an experience. And it's one thing to go to a movie theater and, like, you know, feel all the energy and have a good time with people while you're watching it. It's also another thing to talk to people after they've watched it. Those are fun conversations. Like, I mean, Esh and I usually do, like, throughout the process of us editing the movie, we do like these little screenings of like 5 to 10 people at a time. And we like to get pretty wide. So we'll do like 20, 30 of them during the process, so that, and we're like, you know, we're tracking everything you could think of. We're like, okay, does this character moment work? Do we need to add a line in here to clarify this? Like, you know, and it gets more specific as it gets tighter and tighter and tighter. But like, that process is really fun because you sit there and really kind of geek out and have a connection with people after, and you for an hour, you just discuss why you put things in there and what that meant and what they got out of it and what attributes they put on it because of their own life. And like, those are all incredibly interesting things. And like, some of the interpretations people have of some of the stuff we put in there, we put it in there for a reason, but what they interpret it is really interesting and amazing, because we do leave quite a bit ambiguous on purpose, because we want you to work. We want your mind churning. We want you building, you know, and like world building. When I say building, world building with us. And it's a lot of fun to talk to people afterwards. So it's fun when people are writing things, you know, and having an experience with it. Like, it's kind of amazing for me to think about. Like, I don't know how many movies I've watched and then gone on Twitter or Facebook and been like, man, I really like that movie and blah, blah, blah. And what about that scene? Oh, this fucking line, da, da, da. I don't know if I've ever done that. Yeah. Maybe once or twice. And maybe, you know what I have done? I've texted my friends that rather than put it up on Twitter. And maybe that's, you know, people are doing that now more than just tweeting, or more than just, you know, texting somebody. But that really touches me, man. It really does. And it gets me excited. And I love chatting back. I'm like, oh yeah, well, and then I'll have somebody ask me, because there's plenty of times where I'll watch a movie and I'll say, fuck, what was he thinking when he put that in there? And like, movies I love, I have so many questions about, because I love diving into like why they put that in there, what that meant, and what that calls back to, and do you have a sequel for this, and what did you think of this, and like, people will ask me like, when Chris says this, what does that mean? And I'll be like, oh, well, we put that in there because it's fun, man, it's fun. And they're like, oh, that's awesome, I thought he was gonna do this. And we're like, oh, that'd be fun too. Like, I like that idea.
Well, oh, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I have over 3,000 Blu-rays and 4K now, and I was lucky enough to go to Redbox and get Fatman, you know.
Oh, that's awesome.
I streamed it, and then, so I've seen all the extras, and you guys do a great job with the commentary. So for people watching this, make sure you buy it. It comes out the 26th of January. Unfortunately, we didn't get it pre-Christmas other than streaming, but I got to see some great work by Chance in the deleted scenes.
So funny. He had such great scenes.
And I see why you took him out, because he's a prick. We get it. But he had some great scenes that you took out, but it would have been overkill. And in the commentary, Mel's in the commentary with you guys. Michelle is in the commentary. And then there was one other
Johnny
person, right?
Frango, the DP.
Okay, right, exactly. So it's a fantastic listen. You guys talk start to finish. When I talked to Dan, I said, when we talk to these guys, I don't think we're going to have to feed them much. I think they're going to talk.
They talk. Well, I went to my local grocery store just a few days ago to try, because I wanted to consume the extras too. Is out of stock. And I think you guys probably saw today. Congratulations on, like, it's really hitting on Redbox. It's
killing it.
There's a buzz to it right now. And I'm a numbers person. I like statistics and stuff. And the movies just constantly, like most movies, they come out And, you know, the second week they drop 80%, 50%, whatever it is. This is just going in a trajectory like this. And people are catching on, and there's a lot of social media buzz about it. So congrats on that. And
it's been really fun to see. No, it's been really fun to interact with people about it, because people will come out of it, and I've seen a lot where people talk about, oh, it's my favorite Christmas movie this year, or maybe it's even one of my favorite movies this year. Like, that means so much to us, man. It really does. Like, we made this thing. We knew it was going to stick out like a sore thumb. You know what I mean? Like,
Totally.
we were making something fucking crazy. And that was what was so fun about it. We hadn't seen anything like that. So we were so excited to go make it.
Well,
yeah, and there's so many retreads, and this is just so unique and different. It's just a lot of fun.
And we started this podcast just like 7 months ago or so because of our love for film. And it sounds a little corny, but your being on here today is our email from Mel Gibson. I mean, that's really, you know, this kind of full circle.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you again for this film. It really is. I mean, it's hands down my favorite film of the year for sure.
That's amazing.
And we'll keep shouting from the rooftops and blowing it up on social media until everybody.
Thank you for that.
Everybody we know.
And I think 2 years from now, you guys are going to forget us. We're never going to get you back.
We're glad we could get you,
guys.
We've been working with the same DP for 4 pictures. We got good memories.
All right. Well, hey, thanks so much for your time. Thanks for the movie. It's great talking to you. Great meeting you. Hopefully we'll meet again in the future.
I have no doubt. Yeah, stay in touch.
Thank you guys so much for your time today. Really, really appreciate it. It means a lot.
We appreciate it. You guys stay safe, and happy holidays and happy New Year.
Thanks, guys.
All
Talk
right,
to you soon.
Take care. All right.
Have a wonderful one.
All right, you too.
Bye.